In neighborhoods run by HOAs, control is often disguised as community management. Behind the rules, the meetings, and the polished newsletters lies a constant tension between homeowners and those who think they should be obeyed. For years, my HOA had been led by a woman named Karen. She wasn't just a president. She acted like a self-appointed sheriff. She was the type who patrolled the sidewalks, inspected lawns with measuring tape, and kept a binder full of violations ready to slap onto any homeowner's door. Her latest obsession was keys. Months back, she had pushed through a rule that allowed board members to keep master keys for every property. Officially, it was to ensure safety during emergencies. Unofficially, it was Karen's way of ensuring she could insert herself into anyone's business at any time. Most homeowners didn't like it, but resistance was hard when Karen had allies on the board and an endless appetite for control. I had refused a key. Quietly, firmly, I told her she would never get one for my house. To me, a home is sacred, a place that belongs only to the family who lives inside it. Karen hated my refusal, and from that moment, I knew she had marked me as a problem. The tension boiled over one afternoon. I had been at work, while my teenage son stayed home, preparing for his online classes. The house was quiet, sunlight filtering through the blinds, when suddenly the sound of someone fiddling with the front door echoed through the hall. At first, my son thought it was me coming back early, but the sound was wrong. It wasn't the jingle of our keys. It was scraping, metallic, and persistent. On the other side of the door was Karen. She had come armed with her so-called master key, believing she had the right to walk in. She twisted, forced, and rattled the lock, expecting it to give way. But our locks were newer, and no generic HOA key was ever going to open them. My son froze, listening to the metallic struggle. His heart raced as he realized someone was trying to break in. Karen grew frustrated. She stepped back, looked around the porch, then bent down again to try another attempt. She wasn't quiet about it either. She muttered loudly, her annoyance spilling into the open air. My son's instincts kicked in. He grabbed his phone and dialed 911. His voice was steady but urgent. Someone's trying to get into our house. But here's where the story twisted into irony. That call went directly to his cousin. My brother worked as a dispatcher in the same city, and by pure coincidence, he had picked up the line that day. Within seconds, the details were being relayed. Location, situation, and a note that the caller was a minor at home alone. Emergency response was set into motion. Meanwhile, Karen was losing her patience. Her master key, her symbol of authority, had failed. She wasn't used to doors that resisted her. Her frustration turned into anger, and in true Karen fashion, she decided to escalate. Pulling out her phone, she dialed 911 herself, reporting that she was being locked out of property she had legal access to. She had no idea that her version of the story was being heard by the very same network already handling the original call from inside the house. And she had no idea that her attempt to twist the truth was about to unravel in the most humiliating way possible. As the sirens drew closer, my son stayed hidden by the staircase, phone in hand, adrenaline pumping. Karen stood stubbornly on the porch, phone pressed to her ear, as if her call would override the reality of the situation. She believed she had authority. She believed she had power. But the moment the flashing lights rounded the corner, her confidence began to crack. And that was only the beginning. The sound of approaching sirens broke the stillness of the neighborhood. Curtains shifted in nearby houses, as neighbors peeked out to see what the commotion was. For most of them, it wasn't surprising. When Karen was involved, drama was never far behind. Karen, still on the porch with her phone in hand, straightened her back as if the police arrival would finally validate her authority. She kept muttering under her breath, pacing near the welcome mat she had no right to stand on. She truly believed she was about to teach someone a lesson. Inside the house, my son stayed low, heart pounding, as the flashing lights lit up the living room blinds. His call had already explained everything, but the fear still clung to him. He didn't know what Karen was telling the officers. He only knew that someone was trying to get inside his home, and now the people who could help had arrived. The patrol cars pulled up with urgency. 2 officers stepped out, one approaching Karen while the other moved toward the house cautiously. Karen wasted no time. She pointed at the door, loudly insisting that she had legal access and that the homeowner, me, was refusing to comply with HOA rules. She claimed she had been denied entry despite having a master key issued for safety purposes. But her tone betrayed her. She wasn't calm or professional. She was flustered, annoyed, and desperate to prove she was right. The officer listening to her raised an eyebrow, not entirely convinced. The second officer reached the door and knocked firmly. My son, voice trembling but steady, answered through the door. He explained that he was the one who had called, that he was home alone, and that someone had been trying to force their way inside with a key that didn't belong to them. It was then that the two versions of the story clashed. Karen tried to shout over him, insisting she was authorized and that the child inside didn't understand. But the officer wasn't buying it. The boy had called 911. The dispatcher had logged the report. The situation was clear enough. Someone outside had attempted entry without consent. What Karen didn't realize yet was that her call to 911 had already been linked in the system to the original report. My brother, working dispatch, had made sure the responding officers knew the full picture. They had details of both calls: a frightened minor reporting an attempted break-in, and a woman claiming she was allowed to enter. The contradiction was glaring. Neighbors began to gather at the edges of their yards, drawn by the spectacle. A few whispered to each other, shaking their heads. Everyone knew Karen's reputation. She had gone after lawns, trash bins, holiday decorations, always inserting herself into others' lives. But this, trying to open someone's front door with a key, this was different. This was trespassing in plain sight. Karen's confidence began to waver as the questions from the officers turned sharper. Where was her proof of legal access? Did she have documentation from the homeowner granting her entry? Why was she attempting to enter without permission when a child was inside alone? She faltered, unable to produce anything except the issued key and a vague explanation about safety regulations. The officers weren't impressed. What she called safety, they recognized as overreach. Inside, my son finally gathered the courage to crack the door open slightly, chain lock still in place. He showed his face, phone still in hand, and confirmed once more that he was the original caller. His composure, despite his fear, made an impression. The officers immediately reassured him and told him to stay inside until the situation was under control. Karen's frustration turned into panic. She started raising her voice, insisting that she was being treated unfairly, that the HOA rules gave her the right to be there. But every word only dug her deeper. The officers weren't siding with her. They were documenting everything. One officer calmly informed her that attempting to enter someone's private residence without permission, HOA rule or not, was a serious matter. And when she tried to argue back, they reminded her that 911 lines were for emergencies, not personal disputes or power plays. That's when the weight of the situation began to dawn on her. Her call hadn't given her control. It had exposed her. And the moment she realized whose voice had answered the first 911 call, her so-called emergency, colliding directly with the real report from inside, that was the moment her confidence truly crumbled. The stage was set for the full truth to come out, and Karen wasn't ready for it. And that's how it all came to an end. What started as Karen's attempt to prove her power with a so-called master key turned into one of the most humiliating moments of her life. The police made it clear, HOA rules don't override the law. No matter how many titles she gave herself, she had no right to someone else's front door. Her key meant nothing in the eyes of the law. Neighbors who once stayed silent about her antics suddenly found their voices. They saw her dragged down from the pedestal she had built for herself, exposed for what she truly was, an HOA president who believed control was more important than respect. My son's quick thinking saved the day. His call brought the truth into the open before Karen's lies could take root. And the irony of her dialing 911, not knowing the line was already connected to my family, made the entire situation collapse under its own weight. In the aftermath, the board was forced to review the ridiculous master key rule. Homeowners stood their ground, demanding privacy and respect. And as for Karen, her reputation never recovered. The same neighbors who once tolerated her began questioning her leadership, wondering how far she had gone before, and how far she would have gone if no one had stood up to her. This story isn't just about one woman or one HOA. It's about boundaries, about what happens when authority is abused, and when ordinary people finally push back. But now, I want to hear from you. Was this justice? Did Karen get what she deserved? Or do you think the punishment should have been harsher? Should HOA boards ever be allowed this much power over private homes? Or is this story proof that lines must always be drawn? Share your thoughts. Because in the end, it's not just about one neighborhood. It's about how far we let people go before we say, enough is enough.